Good morning, everybody. My name is Colby Pitts. I'm the Florida Friendly Landscaping Coordinator for Hernando County, and I'm here with Master Gardener Bernie for today's March 21st virtual plant clinic. Dr. Bill was busy and couldn't be here today, so you'll have to deal with us to answer your questions. Um, uh, But if you have any questions, either right now watching live or if you're watching a recording, just leave them in the comments. We'll see them live. Or I think Dr. Bill likes to go through the comments after these are posted and answer any questions they get a little bit later. So, like I said, just go ahead and drop any questions you have in the comments. Good morning. Now, to start us off, I know Bernie had a topic that he kind of wanted to go over. He wanted to talk about flowering trees in Central Florida. So if you want to, what you got on that?
Well, I just thought that that would be a good thing. Landscaping's not really my thing. I'm a lawn guy, and we'll cover some plants that only because I think they're pretty. It has absolutely nothing to do with whether they're great plants or anything. It's just I like them. So, uh, you know, probably the grandest of all the flowering plants is magnolia. The Magnolia grandiflora, the southern magnolia, big mammoth flowers, big mammoth seed pods. Uh, in our area, uh, when the seed pods are on, pileated woodpeckers show up. They love those seeds. Uh, it's a very distinctive seed. I've had people bring them in, and even I was able to identify them. So that shows you how distinctive they are. Big red, pretty things. So uh, magnolias, they do great pretty much from where we are north, and that is one of the giveaways of you're in the south. Once you get to where the magnolias are, from there on you're in a different world. So when you come down from up north, uh, the magnolias and Spanish moss are kind of giveaways that you have arrived in God's land. So you no longer have to shovel snow. Basically, that's what I moved here for. I think it's a beautiful place. So golden rain tree, they do pretty well, and they're a neat tree. Uh, I really like golden rain trees. I planted a couple of them, uh, and they were doing new building construction on the little side road there, and of course they turned around in my driveway, and one of the guys backed over my trees, cut all the bark off of them. They didn't survive, but uh, the golden rain tree uh, is pretty much an invasive plant, but we have this really neat little insect that eats the seeds. So if you have a golden rain tree, you have these little red and black bugs show up, and then they go away. Well, they keep the golden rain trees from being everywhere. So good thing that it's nature's way of helping everybody out. So uh,
Uh,
that's one of those things that uh, you probably don't find that many people. What do we know about weeping willow? Uh, I'm not sure. They grow here. I've seen them here, um, but they don't flower. So
I'll put so Bernie has informed me that we're not going to have Teresa today to drop the publications in, but I can handle it for today. So if you do anything like that, I will. If you just go into the comments, it'll be there as normal. I did put the link to the Weeping Willow fact sheet there in the comments.
Weeping willows are a planted that tend to be a little messy. Uh, they break off pieces, and they need a tremendous amount of water. So um, if you're on a hilltop that's all sand, you're probably not going to be able to do much with weeping willow. They uh, do require a tremendous amount of water. So
And won't the you got to be real careful where you plant them because they'll tear up your concrete. They got real aggressive roots.
well, they
Uh,
get near. Um,
your underground, like your water pipes and stuff, like you really got to
yeah, your sewer system, then
yeah.
septic system. So, but they are pretty. That's one of those plants that uh, if you lived along a creek or lived
Mm-hmm.
bottomland, uh, I wouldn't say anything against having them. I don't think they will do well. Yeah, near a pond.
Yeah, everyone I've seen has been either right on a lake, a pond, creek, or something
Our
like that.
our county is basically all sand.
Mm-hmm.
So with few exceptions, there's very little clay in the soil. There's some areas that the soil looks like it does uh, more northern, but for the most part, we're pure sand, and it tends to change a lot of what we can grow here. If you need a lot of water, we only have a few locations uh, that have a lot of water, and a lot of those places that uh, are ponds are not ponds year round. So, um, and when they dry, they really dry. So it does present a problem growing those things. One of our native plants that does real well and is flowering, at least in the spring, is the plum, the Chickasaw plum.
Chickasaw plum, yeah.
You know, and that's an understory plant. So if you've got a lot of trees and you want something to kind of fill in underneath the trees or along the edge of a wooded area, uh, the plums really do nice. When they're in bloom, they're just a total white mass of flower, uh,
Mm-hmm.
and the animals love those little plums. So uh, alligators don't eat them because they're too high on above ground. But uh, if you're in an area where there's bears or birds, and most areas in Florida do have birds, they don't seem to have a problem getting around.
Mm-mm.
Uh,
Those I think you I don't know how often people like just straight up eat those little plums. I know they're kind of sour, but I do know that I've had jelly like preserves and jam made from them, and it was really good.
there are several of the flowering plants or uh, that produce a pretty decent jelly thing. Um, and Pendo palm, the berries off Pendo palm do a pretty good jelly. In fact, I kind of like the berries. We've had a couple of Pendos, and I've been known to go out and eat a handful of berries. So uh, they are kind of tasty. It's maybe an acquired taste, but I do like them, and they're not too bad. You
Uh,
know, go ahead.
well, there's a similar. Isn't there another? There's another one of those plums. Hog plum. Hog plum. Is that what it's called?
Yeah,
That native to Florida, grows in some sandier soils. I'll have to look it up. I'm not.
yeah. There's
My
two or three of those plums actually.
hog plum. Let's see.
That's kind of the common name as
Or
opposed
flatwoods plum.
as flatwoods. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess hog plum. That's just must be like a Sumter County name for it. I'm not sure, as I've never heard of a flatwoods plum, but I've definitely heard of a hog plum. Just interesting.
And they're red buds. this is about as far south as you can have red buds. You know, people down in Sarasota are not going to be successful with red bud, but you can do that here. And they're a really neat looking tree when they're in bloom. And then the bloom doesn't last all that long, you know, a couple of weeks, but it's very, very pretty where it is. And it makes a nice specimen tree. The tree itself looks pretty decent uh, after it's out of bloom. So, you know, if you want a small little tree, um, you're going to put a little island in the yard, and you want something that's going to maintain some small size and still have some interest. You know, redbud is not all that bad a tree. And another one of the trees that I really like is plumeria. And the neat thing about plumeria is that if you're a beginner, it's probably the easiest plant to propagate that ever existed. If you break off a piece and stick it in potting soil, you have another plant. And it's almost impossible to fail. About the only thing you can do to have it not succeed is to never water it. Doesn't need a lot of water, uh, doesn't need a lot of care, doesn't need a lot of fertilizer, doesn't need a lot of room. Um, Unfortunately, it's a little tender. So north of Sarasota, they should be in pots. Uh, and the wonderful part about it is they don't mind being root bound. So uh, a small pot and a big plumeria is not really a problem. Uh, but you do need to be able to put them in a garage or something, protect them. They will not take a freeze. I bought a couple of them at a plant sale at USF, and they didn't do anything for 4 or 5 years, and I just let them set out and pretty much nature watered them.
Mm-hmm.
And
No, I just I while we were talking about it, there are a bunch of different plants called the hog plum. That one that I was referring to is a native, a Florida native, but these are from all over the place. It seems, but it is kind of interesting. I bet the hog plums I've seen are probably all different kinds of junk growing in the woods.
well,
Um,
that's one of those plants though that all those plums are pretty much available uh, for planting. That if you're a native plant enthusiast, that's a great plant. Uh, Gives you something a little different.
yeah.
Yeah, common names. It, One of the plants I was going to talk about is a butterfly bush, and there's two specific plants that are butterfly bush. But uh, the problem is one of them uh, is super tender here, is will not work very well. The other one uh, does pretty decent. I think it is good here, and it produces a bunch of yellow flowers, and it produces them in the fall. So about the time everything else is uh, giving up, that one's just taking off. So uh, it's a Senna. Let's see if I can get this. Bi Bisolarius, Seneca bisolarius. So uh, if you're interested in a plant that starts flowering in the fall, uh, nice yellow flowers that last reasonable lengths of time, that might be a good one. Butterfly bush.
Um, Corey says that he likes sparkleberries. I like those too. I think they
That's
look really
great,
neat.
and the berries are actually edible.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Very sparkleberry is really one of those really good wildlife attractor plants because you could have anything from hummingbirds to uh, deer eating off of that thing. Like it's a really 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 good um, wildlife attractor. And Anne says plumeria are so easy and beautiful, needs a lot of sun. We've talked about plumeria a few times, I think, even recently.
Yeah, that's like I said, that's a great plant for a beginner because they are really easy to propagate. So, and
Hmm.
you can have as many colors, as you can dream up colors. So,
Oh, I
that,
mean, I was just at the Master Gardener Nursery yesterday, and they had, I think, if I remember correctly, and all their plumeria, it was like a rainbow of different kinds of stuff, all sitting there together. Just whatever you like. Just gonna catch up on our comments here before we get back to going through these trees. Bill says it was a good year for his 6-year-old redbud. I know this was back a little bit. Bloom well, but not like textbook pictures you see from the northern ones. I think that's a pretty common occurrence. Different stuff grows better in different places.
well, the thing about it is the growth rate here is totally different than the growth rate uh, someplace farther north. One, we're at the end of its range, uh, and two, the soil type is probably not optimum at all for redbuds. But uh, we gave redbuds away at Arbor Day. Uh, I don't know, 3 or 4 years ago, and I planted one. The first couple of years, it really didn't do anything, and it must have been 4 years ago because last year it started uh, doing pretty well. This year, it's a nice little plant, but it doesn't have a shape that I would really expect if it was going to be a specimen tree someplace. But on the other hand, it's very pretty, uh, and I think that given 4 or 5 years in its present location, it's probably going to turn out to be almost exactly what I was hoping for. So, you know, that's one of the bad things. If you're a young person and you've moved to Florida or you're just starting out with a home and you're landscaping, you can do things uh, with things in mind, the future in mind. If you're going to plant an oak tree, you can plant a live oak because it's a legacy, it's a heritage that you're going to leave. But if you're 80 years old, which I am, and you plant a live oak, you're not ever really in your lifetime going to get to see how that plant looks. So, you know, maybe a laurel oak would be a better plant for uh, a more mature person. Uh, and
Is that the word we're using now?
well, that sounds better than old fart. You're not supposed to say that. So, I can't help it. What happens is if you stick around long enough, you actually get old, and it's kind of weird, but that's just the way it goes. So,
Yeah.
and you start looking at things uh, as this plant is going to take 10 years to mature and have its correct shape. Well, that's not a good plant for me. And,
Hmm.
and but if you're 40 years old, that would be a great plant because you're going to have more years to enjoy it in its correct shape than not. Whereas uh, I have a lot of people come in with landscaping questions, and it really does depend uh, on what your time frame is. If you landscape and you go in and you put a bunch of little plants in and you put them close together and it is beautiful and it really looks nice, you can't expect it to stay that way. That little plant is going to double in size and then it's going to double in size
Hmm.
again.
It's
And
almost just good for the picture, right when you
yeah,
put it in.
and
Yeah.
and and some of those plants, if you don't mind doing a tremendous amount of work, you can keep things uh, one size, one shape. You plant podocarpus, and uh, if you want to keep a podocarpus at 3 foot tall as a short hedge, you can do it. That trunk on the podocarpus will eventually get to be 18 inches in diameter. But
Hmm.
but for 25 years, you can keep that hedge 3 foot tall. It's amazing that the plant will withstand that abuse. But is that really the right way to go? That's a tree that really wanted to be 40 or 50 feet tall.
Hmm.
So, but it looks beautiful when you first plant it. It's just one of those things. Now, if you're 75 and you're going to plant this and you don't mind keeping it trimmed, in your lifetime it's going to be perfect, and that may be the right thing for you. Uh, but
Yeah.
it's not the right thing if you're going to be there for 40 years and we're hacking this thing up. So, you know,
You know, it's something I've actually been thinking about recently. It's kind of the other end of that. So for me, um, I'm younger and I do not own a house, and it's actually not something that's like really on the table for me right now. I rent, so I wonder about like some renter friendly landscaping because not everybody is going to want you changing up the yard and the landscaping you have. I think a lot of it ends up being maintenance of what's there already. Because like I don't even have at my house, I don't even have like a flower bed or anything. We have some hedges, and that is the extent of the landscaping uh, where I'm at. But I'm not so sure my landlord would like it if I dug up half the yard and put mulch and flower beds and stuff like that in there. And what happens when my lease is up and then I leave and it's like, well, I kind of threw all that away, all that time and effort. So I've been thinking about that recently. I've been trying to kind of trying to come up with a game plan for somebody who may not be, you're only in your house for a year. uh you know I was just something that was on my mind, and it kind of called to it when you were talking about yeah, kind of the other end of that spectrum.
well, that kind of puts you in a position of one having to use potted plants.
Mm-hmm.
Second, restricting the number that you can have, which that's not all bad. You could buy some um, heirloom potted plants and uh, as long as a small number, that's not too bad. Taking care of a plant like that. I had a lime tree that uh, because lime trees uh, can't tolerate the cold here. I had it potted, and I would repot the thing every 3 years and uh, do a little root pruning so that the everything was pretty much uh, in the correct size for the top that it had, and that would have been an ideal plant. It was about 3.5, 4 foot tall. It would have gone well on a porch or something near an entrance. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
it would have been fine. So, and I kept that plant uh, going for about 14 years, and then I had some back problems, and I couldn't put it in one winter because I couldn't move it
Mm-hmm.
and lost it. But that's probably the only plant that I've really been upset with losing because
Mm-hmm.
over the years I had spent a lot of time on that particular plant, and I think you could do that. I think you could take some of those plants and uh, spend a lot of time on just those plants. If you spend a couple of hours a week taking care of plants, that's not too bad.
Sure, sure. I so the I've rented two places that like since I've been out of the dorms, and in both of them, I had indoor plants for a time, but I got cats. I have two cats, and one of them, he's like he's got beef with them, so he'll knock them over. And then you also have to be careful because you don't, cats will he chews on the fake plants we have. So it's like, I know if we left out anything real, you have to be real careful that it's not toxic to your animals. Which there's a whole database if anyone's interested. If you look up pet toxicity or plant toxicity for pets, there's a few massive databases of it. And it was, and at that point I was just like, man, well, we're just gonna have fake plants because I can't trust Bogey, my orange cat, not to knock not to knock everything over, because he did it. He killed all my succulents and my bamboo, and I was about done with it. We got a question here. Are fire spikes considered to be invasive? I don't think so. I know that they're not native to Florida. I want to say Central America or Mexico maybe, but they're not on any any of the big important invasive lists. I know that. Anne suggests earth boxes, which are grow boxes you can take with you, only need to be filled a few days at a time. Roots grow down and take as much or as little water as needed. And there is a link to earth boxes. I'll have to check that out. Thank you for the suggestion. And Corey says Florida friendly for what I know, referring to those fire spikes. Yeah. I think I'm almost certain that it is. I know that it's not on any of our big invasive lists, and I'm pretty sure that you're correct in that it is a Florida friendly species.
The firebush is one of the plants that I was going to mention that is a really pretty plant, but in our area, in Hernando County and north, firebush gets zapped back by frost, so it's fairly tender, but it recovers. So it's one of those things that it gets killed back to the ground. You go out and clean it up, and at the end of the season, it's 6-8 foot tall, maybe 9-10 foot under some conditions. But we didn't have that killing freeze, that frost at all this year. And the firebush is starting out at 7-8 foot tall, and it's going to be very interesting to see what that does with 2 years of growth instead of the one that it normally gets. So I'm anticipating some really big firebush, and that is a fantastic plant for hummingbirds. I would sit and just watch them. I had this one little male, the meanest little snotty. Anything else would show up, he would chase them off. That was his plant. He wanted the whole plant. So I thought, if you're big enough bully to get by with it, I guess in nature that's the way things are done.
Yeah, that's how it goes. With that fire spike, I actually just looked it up. Apparently, it is actually invasive in other in some of the warmer places in Florida, South Florida, South America. I think it's even invasive in Hawaii, but Hawaii is one of those real delicate areas when it comes to invasive species. But man, the distribution on like where it's naturalized fire spike, it's kind of crazy. United States all the way over to India, it's naturalized there, and a bunch of places in between. Which means, for those of you who don't know, naturalized means that it is not being cultivated, it's growing in the wild in places. Not planted by people on purpose, which is a naturalization. Because naturalization, you can have a non-native species or a non-native plant growing in the wild, and that does not make it invasive, even if it's naturalized. It has to be displacing native wildlife to be considered invasive most of the time.
There's a
Um,
tremendous number of naturalized plants. You know,
oh
the people that have come here uh, have planted things. It was like citrus. Uh, the sailors planted some citrus because they needed the vitamin C
hmm
to prevent scurvy. So
Yeah, tired of
every
having
place they
scurvy.
went, if the climate was amenable to it, there's citrus. And a lot of the various forms of citrus that we have today come from the old citrus uh, having some um, weird little thing happen, and the people taking the uh, plants that uh, weren't uh, what they were supposed to be and making them a new variety. So
hmm
back in the 1800s, they would have an orange grove, and maybe you would find one orange that was a little sweeter, and they would cultivate that one. And so eventually you get these cultivars that were named after people, the Parson Brown orange and those kind of things. And those were all back in the 1800s. They were just offshoots. So uh, it's not necessarily bad to have these plants that become native, but there are a lot of plants that were not here prior to uh, Columbus coming here.
Sure, sure. I mean, if you think about it, you are going to have, natural spread and decline of species. That happens. It's happened for millions of years, but um, it's you when you see it happen quickly, which almost certainly means that it is a human vector there moving it around, whether on purpose or not. That's when you have to worry about it being an invasive species, because when it's um, kind of like happening very quickly. Nature doesn't happen quickly. Like spread, evolution, things like that don't happen quickly naturally. So um, that when those human vectors are making things happen really fast, that's when you begin to worry. Not so much as when it's a natural spread.
Now there was a little beetle that was taking out all of our bay trees, and they it had a very unusual distribution. It came into the country in North Carolina, I believe, and it showed up at places that were far apart, and uh, took them a while to figure out what was going on. But um, apparently, the beetle came in on shipping crates on the pallets. That was in the wood in the pallets, and the people going to football games would take firewood, and they started out using some pallets from North Carolina as firewood for their little campouts at the football games, and they drove firewood all over the country, and it was the places where there were football teams. If there was a major college team in the southeast, that was where the little beetle showed up first. So
Hmm.
now it's against the law to transport firewood, but unfortunately, I don't think anybody pays attention enough to law. I don't even think anybody knows there's a law, but there is. If you want to go someplace and camp overnight, do not take your firewood across state lines against the law.
Mm-mm. And I guarantee you that you can probably do it a couple times and you'll be all right. But the one time that you're not all right, you'll know. um, so yeah, there's a lot. So the the legislation we have that establishes the invasive species here in Florida, and nationally, it's a big deal crime to transport any of those invasive species. I think the penalties are worse for animals, but with plants, I mean it's still like it's pretty gnarly. So don't dig up a pepper tree and transport it right in the garbage. Don't drive around with it. Um, Corey asks, "What would you guys be planting this week?" And that is definitely a burning question.
That's not a good question for me. I am not a gardener anymore. It's
Hmm.
one of those things that the truth is, if I get down on the ground, I can't get back up. So uh, I haven't actually done much gardening for the last 3 or 4 years. But this is really awfully late in the season to be planting anything. There's a few things uh, that you can plant some okra. That's not a problem. Some of the beans are not a problem, but for the most part, uh, you're approaching the point. Sweet potatoes you can plant, but the rest of the things. Uh, this is going to be uh, coming up on harvest time for the things that got planted earlier, and our summer is just too hot. If you're a Florida gardener, you've got a handful of things that you plant in the summer, but for the most
Hmm.
part, they're uh, the things, the tomatoes. It's way too late for tomatoes. It's way too late for peppers. It's way too late for a lot of things. So
You could plant but you can do beans right now. Yeah, if you're doing any beans or squash. I just saw the Master Gardener's social media, like the big one, posts every month. They post a really really good graphic that shows. I'm actually going to try to find it here, but it shows, hey, it's March. This is what you should be doing, and it's like, man, uh, it's a lot of information, a lot of good information. It's compacted into one easy to digest graphic. Um, and I implore you to follow the Master Gardener's Facebook page. It's really
I I had the recommended things to be planning now laying on my desk, and it disappeared. So,
hey, somebody else needed to know, I
well,
suppose.
when you're only here one day a week, uh, there's four other
You're
people.
probably coming back to a different setting.
Yeah, everything's gone.
Luckily, I have it. So as for vegetables, I'm not sure. Like Bernie said, it's a little late to be doing anything. It's gonna get really really hot soon. Um, but flowers, you can plant a lot of flowers right now. Um, so those are your uh, phlox, your celosia, that type of thing. All those pretty flowers can be grown right now. I know that the master gardeners were telling me that they're getting milkweed in at their nursery, so it's getting about that time for milkweed. If you're enjoy and want to see some monarch butterflies, um, that's a great option.
Yeah,
Uh,
plant the native milkweeds. Don't plant the
yeah,
South
yeah.
American version.
Um, Bill says he'll be seed starting some annuals. Um, Here's something I want to touch on. Actually, after going, I was at the, like I've mentioned, I was at the Master Gardener Nursery yesterday. I've been getting a lot of calls from our some of our Hernando County residents that you got an insert that had alternate ground covers on them. Trying to reduce the amount of turf grass. That is a big goal for water conservation. Um, and I get a lot of calls asking me, "Oh, where can I get sunshine mimosa? Where can I get frog fruit? Where can I get Asiatic jasmine or perennial peanut?" The Master Gardener Nursery has frog fruit and perennial peanut right now, and you can just go. Well, not right now; they're not open until Saturday. But Wednesdays and Saturdays, you can go pick it up right now if you're interested in a new ground cover. That is the only nursery that I think I'm allowed to actually recommend. I saw them with my own two eyes. They're there. So please, if you're interested in an alternate ground cover, that's a good place to get one. And they're also super knowledgeable. They can explain to you exactly what's required of you to get that going, to reach your goals with that plant. Um, if you ask them, hey, what are some ground covers I can use? What this is my situation? They'll excuse me. They'll be able to tell you to a T exactly what you should do.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of local nurseries. So, uh, the big box stores are great if you want annual flowers and you want a carton of flowers. Man, there's no better place to buy them. Those are planted. You stick them in the ground. They go for 4, 5, 6 months, and then they're gone. And you buy another plat, and they're cheap, and that's great. Uh, but don't buy the expensive plants at a big box store.
Yeah, I mean, they would sell you stuff that is not going to grow, that is going to die. They'll sell it to you with a straight face, and then when it dies, they'll ask you to come buy another one. I mean, you really have to be careful and do your research. And if you're really wanting an investment, the big box stores are
Well,
not the place to make that investment.
they're selling plants like it was uh, paint cans or uh, wheelbarrows or whatever. It's pure hardware. It's only a means to an end. Uh, they mean to get as many of them out and get as much money as they can, and that's not bad. These people do a great service, and but it's just that certain plants you're much better to buy from your local nursery. And the thing about it is you want to keep your local nursery in business because those are the people that maintain the inventory of plants that should be sold in your neighborhood, in your
Hmm.
area. And as a general rule, they're people that are very knowledgeable. It's not always true. I mean, there are some nurseries that the people don't have a clue, but a lot of times your local nursery is growing them someplace local. Uh, so they have trees that are acclimated to your environment. They have bushes that are acclimated to your environment. They have plants that have a low probability of getting diseases because they're in your environment, and they don't plant things that are going to be subject to a lot of diseases because they can't afford to lose the plant. So
Yeah, yeah.
it that and there's nothing wrong with the big box stores. There are some of the big box stores that are super knowledgeable, but their inventory is what comes off the truck. They do not
Hmm.
make the decision on what to buy. Uh, they only make the decision of what to sell out of their inventory, and
Hmm.
they have to
Um,
turn over everything, whether it should be or not. And
yeah,
the local nursery, if it shouldn't be there, they don't bother to buy it. That and so consequently they don't have to sell it. And it's just one of those things where uh, the local knowledge sometimes uh, is actually a pretty good thing. And you know, get to know your nursery guy. Stop by, take a look at what they've got. Every once in a while, some new plant comes along that uh, maybe you're interested in fruit, and they get a little fruit plant that'll work here or work where you are, and
hmm,
it's something a little exotic, and it's a little fun to have. It's always nice to go by if you get to where you know that the guy running the nursery by first name and he knows you by first name, then you're gardeners. Those are the people that are actually doing the things. Those are the people that have the knowledge, the local knowledge that can really help you out. So it's very worthwhile to cultivate a relationship with those people. And
Sure,
I
sure.
have no interest whatsoever in any nursery anywhere. So uh, I mean, I'm not blowing smoke on this one. It's uh, from experience. I spent a lot of money that I shouldn't have because I spent it at a big box store, and uh, we had a Kmart uh, that they had beautiful, wonderful plants. And I bought 25 citrus plants from them. And I took them and I planted them and I watered them. And I was working in Tampa and I would come home from work and I would go out and I would water those little babies and I would talk to them. And I thought that was the greatest thing going. And they all died and they were all on the wrong rootstock, should have never been planted in our county. But it
Hmm.
took me 2 years to find that out. And in the 2 years that it took to find that out, those suckers at Kmart packed up and left.
We all know how Kmart's business model turned out. Um, uh, Corey said all those hippie summer greens. They have some funny names. Longevity spinach is one that I think I've heard. Just whatever you're into. Um, Cassie says I need ideas for a fast growing native to put near a fence for more privacy. Any suggestions? Uh, Fast growing native. Hmm.
Well, it's got to be screening if she wants it for privacy. So that
Hmm.
means it's um, that's in the shrub category. So
Uh.
my favorite screening plant is a tree. I love podocarpus. That's got
Yeah.
to be one of the nicest screening plants ever.
Well, viburnum, the native variety of a viburnum would work as well. And
Uh,
I think they grow pretty quickly, huh?
the hollies would do pretty good. Um, hollies work very well. Uh, yeah,
And you could also look into. I mean, it depends on the type of fence, and if you own the fence, how all that goes. But you could also try a vine. Um, those passion fruit vines,
yeah,
I
it's
think
not
could work.
that's not screening very well though.
What do you mean by screening?
When you talk about privacy, what you want to do is fill in, and
Yeah,
and and passion fruit is a nice vine, but it doesn't fill in very well, and it you
I
know
guess it
yeah
depends on.
if you had chain link fence, yeah, you could put a bunch of passion vine on and cover it, but if you had uh, any kind of a, a smaller fence, farm fence or that kind of fence, uh, you're not going to get any height. You're not
Mhm.
really going to screen. So you need something that's going to go um, 6 to 8 feet. Uh, and depends also on where you are. Cassie, where are you in this state? So you know you could do something. Um, a lot of vines that not vines, but a lot of plants. Firebush would make a great screen, except that if you're from here north, it's going to die off in the winter. So,
Yeah. Um, oh, she's in Hernando County. She's here.
oh, okay.
And not to get us off topic. Bill says saw a famous branded plant at a big box store labeled zone 4 to 8. Yeah, that's nowhere close. Nowhere close. Um, But back to our discussion here.
See, fast growing.
We do have a suggestion from Susan here. Beautyberry, overlooked as native, people consider it a scrub shape, but trimmed and watered, it will bush out and reach 6 feet. I think you just have to. I think you just have to look. You have to look. You have to remember that different plants can take different forms depending on how you prune them, what you do with them, where you plant them. I do know that there's some really good options that are available in the FFL plant guide. And then all those link to different IFAS articles that you can see kind of some of the different morphs of those plants. They have the ones that are native that are labeled. It might be a good place to look. Bernie looks like he's doing some research.
Yeah, I'm looking at the book.
So, no, there you go. And that book that Bernie's looking at is the same information as what's online on the FFL plant and landscape design guide, plant selection and landscape design guide. Catherine asked, "Did you say it's too late to plant our tomato and pepper transplants
No, if they're
into our raised bed?"
plants, the problem is they're going to be done basically the 1st of June. It's going to be too hot. They're going to stop producing, and generally about the first big rain we get in June knocks the tomato plants to the ground. It's not true of cherry tomatoes, but if you're talking big tomatoes, the end of production is usually around the 1st of June. So if the transplants are old enough that they're going to be producing, in April or May, you get a month or 2 months of tomatoes. But if they're big box store plants that are only 3 weeks old, it's getting kind of close on. You'll get some, but you won't get enough that it really makes it worthwhile. So, if like I say, if usually you want to start your transplants December or January, and if these were started December or January, no problem whatsoever. That they'll produce and do fine. If they're transplants that were started 1st of the month, it's a little late.
Corey says he calls it the tomato apocalypse. His birthday, Flag Day, June 14th. It's like a switch. Yeah, man. Florida can be pretty brutal with the heat we get. And it's like, I know just a few weeks ago I was complaining that I'm tired of being cold. And then it was 80 degrees for like 3 days. I'm like, man, it's hot out here.
Yeah. Tomatoes do a funny thing. The tomatoes, when the nighttime temperature gets to be 75 degrees, the little tube that the pollen has to go through in the flower closes and doesn't open during the day. So if the nighttime temperature is high, the tomatoes keep setting flowers, but they don't set fruit anymore. Had a good friend that took a little red wagon, built sides up on it, filled it with dirt, put his tomato plants in the little red wagon, pulled it out of the garage during the day. The tomato plants bushed up. They were very happy, pushed it back into an air-conditioned garage at night. Had tomatoes year-round. But, not everybody can do that. So, and cherry tomatoes, they'll actually produce, you can get maybe 8 months production out of cherry tomatoes.
Yeah, well, it isn't, because the cherry tomatoes are smaller, right? There's less water resource invested, so I think that they'll still produce fruit with more heat. because
They
heat's
they
water
shut
wise.
down in real high temperatures, and if you keep them protected, you can keep them going as long as you don't let them get frozen. They'll run. Uh, Usually, the plants can live 10 months pretty easy, even if you don't give them any protection. Plant them
Mhm.
uh, right after Christmas and protect them through the freezes, and they're good up into the really cold weather in November, December.
Yeah. Corey actually put a good blurb of some what seems to be researched evidence or researched information here about what he's seeing with tomatoes. Some of his notes: um, daytime temperature above 85 or night above 70, it gets tacky, and fertilization drops to near zero. And the flowers drop if the temps drop. Too cold. Yeah, it seems like tomatoes are super fickle. It seems like it's got to be just right. I think with a lot of those larger fruits, because it takes so much of a resource investment for them to grow those fruits, they can be kind of hard to get just right, to be at their best. And Anne says that cherry tomatoes do well for her up to a freeze.
Right.
Um, yeah, man, vegetable
We
gardening, that's some
we've
tough
got
stuff.
some tomatoes with the seed unknown. They bought some seed from one of these little ladies at
Yeah, yeah.
on a Saturday at the parking lot, and they just stuck them in the hydroponics experiment that we've got, and they've produced some of the best tomatoes, and they've gone. They
Nobody knows.
survived through the winter. Uh, we didn't really get a big enough freeze to take them out, and so we've had tomatoes, and I love them. Every time we go by, if nobody's stolen them already, I grab a handful. So
There you go. You oughta send it to the Plan ID folks. See if they can give you a real specific
variety, yeah,
a real specific variety. They're really good. So it's getting about to the end of our time today. So I'm gonna go ahead and do our pluggables, and then we'll answer any last minute questions. So if you have any really hard questions because he's not here, I can rag on him a little bit. Just send them right to Dr. Lester and uh, get him to answer them. But otherwise, if you call the extension office on Thursdays, Master Gardener Bernie does not answer the phone there, but you can get to him if you ask. Um, and I gotta find these. Bill normally does this, so I have to look through these to find them, to find all the stuff that I'm.
all you people that moved to Florida, how many of you
Oh
remember
goodness.
as a youngster taking the salt shaker and going out and walking through the tomato patch and just picking the tomatoes fresh off the vine, salting them, eating them, and coming back into the house with your hands all messy and your face covered with tomato juice? So, uh, if you didn't do that, you missed something that was really one of the greater things, one of the joys of being a, a kid in the northern states. So a
I
lot of
see.
people I know did that. In fact, most of the people I know did that. But if you did, think back to the good times, and uh, maybe someday we'll have a tomato where you can do that here. But I really miss those big, juicy, all over my face tomatoes
Oh,
and
well, we
the
had.
salt shaker that was now slipping out of my hand.
I'll see. No, we would just go get oranges out of the tree here, or you'd come back and your hands would be all scratched up from digging in the blackberry bush. Um, but no tomatoes. uh, if I can help you with anything FFL or watering restrictions, county stuff, that's my email. You could find me there. Or for any of the events that I hold, the events that I hold with Extension, you can find those at my link tree right there. Rain barrel workshops, compost bin workshops, all that stuff's going to be through the LinkedIn, on Facebook, on Instagram, all that jazz. So we'll look right here, check any of our see if we got any last minute questions.
I'll tell you something, that the participation on this show was fantastic from the viewers. We really, really enjoy that. It makes it worthwhile, makes it fun for us. And I
Yes.
hope it made it fun for you guys, because we really want to say thank you for everybody that participated. And you're
Yeah.
welcome to do that anytime.
Normally, I think Bernie and I get off topic when it's just us. I think we get off topic real far. I think we were laser focused today. I think we stuck with it the whole time, right where we needed to be. I think we were on topic the whole hour. Um, uh, Ann says the best she can do is canned tomatoes for the winter months. And Catherine, related to you eating your tomatoes as a
Yeah.
kid.
Hey, Catherine.
But Sam mentions the longevity spinach from the sunflower family, easy to propagate. Those are those summer greens that we had mentioned earlier. Corey seems to be more on my page with that. It was oranges, not tomatoes. And we got some thank yous down there from Ann and Catherine. Well, like Bernie said, thank you guys. If you did not come here and talk to us and comment and ask questions, we wouldn't do it. So the whole reason we're here is to provide information, maybe even some entertainment, every Thursday from 10 to 11. So we need you guys to do that. So thank you so much for attending. I think that's about all for us this week, but I'm going to be here next week. Bernie's, I assume, is going to be here next week, and I think Bill will be back next week. But if he's not, I think we'll be all right. So thanks, everybody, and we'll see you then.